Thanks, Chair. Minister, are you going to incentivise the technology-neutral approach to climate action until an alternative can be reached? Are you aware of the carbon emissions reductions which can be achieved by the use of biofuels as both a solution to 10% transport and 50% in our home heating? Has your department considered innovates to incentivise further research and development into the biofuels and other supports to the biofuel industry?
My department and I are aware of the need to decarbonise our economy and society. It's my view that we'll need to exploit all opportunities and means of carbon abatement available to us as we look to achieve very ambitious decarbonisation before 2030, the transition to a net zero carbon economy by 2050. Officials of my department have met with Liquid Gas Ireland, a representative association for the leading suppliers of bio-LPG to rural homes and businesses, and have been made aware of the abatement potential achievable from the use of biofuels. While home heating, transport fuels and their decarbonisation are not within the policy remit of my department, it is clear that a range of interventions will be necessary to achieve the level of abatement required. Government policy will need to support households and businesses to make cost-efficient choices to meet that ambition. We must, of course, do this in a way that meets the highest standards of sustainability. The EU Renewable Energy Directive provides detailed rules for the application and administration of sustainability and greenhouse gas emission saving criteria to biofuels, bioliquids and biomass fuels. Since 2010, increasing volumes of biofuels have been introduced into the Irish conventional fuel mix through a biofuel blending obligation on fuel suppliers. I know the use of biofuels is already one of the main aspects of land transport decarbonisation, and the Minister Ryan, the Minister for Transport, published a Renewable Fuels for Transport policy statement back in November. The statement sets out a roadmap for the supply and use of renewable energy in transport to meet Ireland's national commitments under the Climate Action Plan 2021 and European obligations under the Renewable Energy Directive. My department is working closely with stakeholders to equip businesses to take climate action, preparing themselves for our transition to a low-carbon economy and therefore making our enterprise and employment base more resilient. My department received 55 million in EU funding under Ireland's National Recovery and Resilience Plan to help manufacturing companies to reduce their emissions in order to incentivise the early adoption and research of technologies to deliver CO2 abatement from manufacturing combustion emissions. Funding under these programmes will focus on businesses using fossil fuels that can now install technologies leading to significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions.
Minister, biofuels is just one of the many ways that we can combat our climate change and offer a real option while still earning a living for so many people in Ireland. Yes, there are still many other options to combat climate change using biodigesters to capture the gas and to sell to the grid. That can help to reduce our emissions. Some farmers are asking to be energy farmers by growing grasses that can be used in biodigesters along with manure, food waste and timber residue. Then this is dedicated and put aside for this land is put aside for biofuels, which will minimise the requirement for nitrogen that comes from Russia. Buying oil from America does not contribute to anything in our circular economy. As Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, you need to get a buy-in, and these projects, not leaving this to agriculture, climate and environment, you are to spearhead this for the enterprise in this country. Thank you.
Minister. Tánaiste.
Thanks very much, Deputy. I think biofuels definitely have a role to play, and my department very much acknowledges that. And the fact that we have the biofuel obligations in petrol and diesel is evidence of that. But I think it is important to say that all fuels aren't equally green. We know that wind energy and solar energy is 100% green, and if you can turn that into green hydrogen, that's 100% green too. Whereas often biofuels are made from animal emissions, and you need animals, and if you even more animals, you have to take into account the impact that has too, and also the use of agricultural land that could be used for food production being used for fuel production has an impact as well on the amount of food produced and potentially the cost of food. So these things need to be taken in the round, but I definitely agree that biofuels are part of the solution, and my department has engaged with Liquid Gas Ireland on that, and as we develop schemes and programmes to assist businesses to decarbonise, I think it is going to be part of the mix.
Thanks, Minister. Minister, did you know that the Climate Action Committee, chaired by Brian Ledden from Limerick, have refused in writing to meet industries such as biofuel industries who want to use our natural products in this country. Are you aware that the excess biofuel that is produced in this country is exported? Biofuels can reduce our emissions in our home heating by mixing 50% biofuel with home heating oil, which will reduce emissions in our heating, where people have no alternatives and still doing their bit for the reduction of emissions. Minister, put a structure in place with Gas Networks Ireland, ESB and SEI. In this way, so many can sell to the grid while playing a part for climate change. You, as Minister, must support industry in a meaningful way by business support schemes and building enterprise around these structures. This is for people, Minister, that have no alternatives. We're talking about a just transition. A just transition is that we bring people with us. By using biofuels, by using the lands that we have available to us at the moment, we can reduce emissions while still using farmland, and we can while there is no alternatives. And at the moment, there is no alternatives. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Deputy. I wasn't aware of the fact that the committee didn't agree to that meeting. I don't know the details behind it, so I would prefer not to comment on it. But my department officials have met with Liquid Gas Ireland and are certainly willing to hear what they have to say. Pretty much everyone in Ireland has electricity, so you know the best alternative actually is electricity, and electricity produced from wind and solar. So that is the best option, but of course there's space for other options as well. Certainly for heating that mightn't always be practical, so there is space for other solutions too.